the class. My wife, Giovanna Keene, right next to me here. Um, we're really excited to share with you guys this morning. Normally, just as a preface, we would teach the second week. Due to some work conflicts that I have with scheduling, we bumped ourselves down to week 4. So what we're gonna talk morning, what we're gonna talk to you today about. I'm going to very briefly touch on some of the things that were housekeeping items, but we covered that last week with Kenny and Soraya, so I won't necessarily go into detail about them, but just more as general reminders, right? The next thing that we're going to talk about, which is the meat of why we're meeting together today, is to talk about foundational principles of why we're doing what we're doing in this class, and then more so how you're going to go about doing it. We've already started down that road of putting into practice what you guys are learning through the methodology, meaning that you've already got your homework assignments issued to you. We're going to talk about what are those homework assignments doing for you, how is it going to translate into good stewardship, and then more so, we're going to blend our testimony into that storyline for you guys. We're really excited about sharing because this module that we teach is really personable to my wife and I, not only through the things that we have gone through together as a married couple, but I'm going to share a lot of transparent testimony about what I went through as a young adult and why we feel compelled to share with you guys and why we teach this specific module. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. My wife and I, we manage our finances very closely now. We also work for an accounting, or I had a history of working for the accounting firm. My wife still works for that accounting firm, but we come from that background as professionals. I did not grow up that way, though, as far as being financially literate and educated with my finances. In fact, I struggled heavily for the first 10 years of my adult life. And so this is very personable to me, not just because it's our journey as a married couple, but because of what I went through as a young man trying to go out and figure out how to live in this world and be successful financially. And I learned through experience firsthand of what not to do in a lot of cases. So I made this joke, and it's a saying, but wisdom is learning from experiences, but the best wisdom is learning from other people's experiences so that you don't have to go through it. I wish I would have really took into that as a young man, but I really didn't. And on top of that, I'm just being super real with you guys. I was a knucklehead when I was younger, meaning that I was going to do things my way. I was going to try to figure it out because I had this can-do attitude about my life and about trying to learn and figure stuff out. But at the same time, I didn't want to be told what to do. And that led to me struggling heavily and learning some really harsh life lessons along the way, up until the point where I gave it to the Lord and my financial trajectory started to change. And that's a part of our testimony that we're really excited to share with you guys today. So I'm going to jump right into it. Real quick, just as a reminder for everybody, getting the most out of this program. So your attendance, right? Attendance is key, but also remember that along with the attendance, there's also the Church Center app that we have created to where we're posting recaps, the recaps of what we taught that week, the video that you have that is the recording for each one of those weeks. And then in addition to that, any kind of resources that we want you to have so that you can be successful for that week. So your attendance in class is important, but we've created a digital program so that you can continue to track along in the event that life happens and you have to be out of the class physically, right? You have the opportunity to continue to stay on track. And then even more so, the most important thing is the homework that you're doing in this class. The actions that you're putting into this class are what are allowing you to use not only the guidance from a biblical finance perspective of learning how to do things God's way with your finances, but then in addition to that, how are you actually applying that into your personal finances so that in the short window of time that we have together, you are really seeing how this methodology works for you. So number one, you create new habits, and then two, those habits turn into stewardship long term. I always say it's really important. It's great what you guys learn in this class, what we learn together in this class. But the most important thing is, what are you doing after this class? What are you taking with you that transforms the way that you steward your finances so that you better yourself long term? And in long term, you are also teaching not only yourself, but your children and your children's children about good financial education. Things that I wish that I was brought up with. And you guys have that opportunity to break those generational curses and set a new standard for your families. The book, have it over there. My wife is going to hold it up. Total Money Makeover. I won't go into to too much detail about it, But what that book is a really great book. It not only summarizes the Financial Peace University's methodology of what's called the 7 baby steps, which is in each one of your folders. It gives you a knockdown of what each one of those baby steps mean, but then it also gives you practical examples of how to apply those different seven baby steps and real life scenarios of people that have gone through those different steps and how they have leveraged those steps to have victories in their own sense. For my wife and I, one of the things that we learned from that book was adjusting what we called our fixed expenses, things that we previously thought that was like non-negotiable items. One of them being our healthcare insurance, the amount that we were paying for our healthcare premiums. Society kind of teaches you, and the math teaches you in your jobs that if they offer healthcare insurance to you, they usually offer you 2 or 3 different types of plans. One being your low deductible, meaning that that's the most expensive option because it gives you the perception of more coverage, better coverage for your healthcare in case something happens. The high deductible, which is the least expensive option, but you don't get as great coverage, right? What that book actually showed us is Dave Ramsey says, I actually challenge you to do the math on how those plans work out. If you're paying a higher premium, meaning that it costs you more paycheck by paycheck, you're thinking that you're getting more coverage. But if you actually do the math and you choose the least expensive option, but you also plan for financial, not emergencies, but medical expenses, i.e. your deductible amount, your out-of-pocket amounts, and you plan for those things, you will fare out on average better if you choose the less expensive route and you plan for your medical expenses than you would if you choose to just pay a higher premium every paycheck. So for us, what that actually meant was we got $6,000 back into our spending plan on an annual basis, which translates into $500 every month. Every month we were getting $500 back so that we can apply it into what's called our debt snowball and help us pay off our debt. When we started down this journey, my wife and I had, through life circumstances and whatnot, we had incurred what we would call a large amount of debt, right? And so that was a part of our journey and our testimony of why we started this program, because we really wanted to try to pay that debt off as fast as possible. We had a healthy income at the time, and to be completely transparent with you guys, we just felt like we were not making as much progress with our finances that we wanted to. So in a sense, we got frustrated. We were like, what else can we be doing? We feel like we're managing very well, but how much more can we squeeze out of this budget of ours so that we can do more and be more productive with our income? That book kind of lifted the thinking cap off of us towards things that we previously thought were non-negotiables. And then we looked at them and did the numbers and we made some changes, and we were able to capture money back into our pockets so that we can pay off debt faster. And we had what we would call a tremendous amount of success financially because of things like that. So I encourage you guys to pick up that book. You can get it at the bookstore. I think it's like $17 downstairs. But on the Church Center app, I give you a free PDF copy. In addition to that, you also have a free copy of the workbook that accompanies that. Okay? So I want you guys to really take into those 4 things. That's really what's going to help you guys to be successful in this class. Let's jump right into the meat of why we're here today. So let's talk about the why. Dr. Green, when we first launched this class, Dr. Green always does a fantastic job of setting the foundation of why God calls us to manage our finances, and really emphasizing God's word on our finances and why he calls us to do the certain things that we do, and why he calls us to think about our finances the way that we do. As a foundation, though, let's break it down to why we're actually in this class and why we manage our finances in a certain way. And then I'm going to also emphasize the meat of this message, which is how are we going to go about doing that. So number one, you have to understand that the principle is that God calls us, it's a biblical finance principle, to be good stewards of our finances. I'm a numbers person in nature, so I really appreciate studies and statistics of being able to tell stories and narratives of things that I'm observing, but I need to have it backed up by what numbers and studies actually show to kind of prove my point, right? When we designed this module a couple years ago, we pulled some studies that were from different publications like payments.com, payroll.org, and lendingclub.com. And they were real eye-opening statistics that really give you an understanding of what our financial climate is today in today's society, okay? Now, keep in mind, this was 2 years ago. right? And so based off of these numbers, you tell me in your own sense, you don't have to blurt it out, but have things gotten worse or have they gotten better, right? So let's start with this. 65 to 75% of Americans state that they live paycheck to paycheck. That is a half to 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And so nearly half of American households are only one emergency away from having a financial disaster. What financial disaster means is that you don't have enough money to cover your basic living expenses for 3 months in the event of unforeseen financial hardships like losing a job or having unexpected medical expenses, right? Being completely transparent with you guys, my wife and I have gone through both of them, right? And we're actively going through one of them right now. The idea of living paycheck to paycheck kind of puts this stress on you to say, how do I manage my finances a little bit better? The common gut reaction of being in a situation where you feel like you don't have enough money is to do what? Go make more money, right? And so the idea is that I need to go make some more income, meaning I need another job on top of what I'm doing right now, need a side hustle, or maybe I need a better paying job. So let me upskill myself to get a better paying job, right? That might be that it is tangible because more money gives you different options. It allows you to make different choices, right? But then in addition to that, you're not really addressing the root cause of the problem, is what I call it. When you really look at it, if your idea of getting more out of your finances is that I need to just make more money, another statistic that we pulled is this. More than 1/3 of Americans earning at least $250,000, $250,000 annually, said that they are also living paycheck to paycheck, right? So think about that. Very healthy income in that sense, but they are also living paycheck to paycheck as well. The survey showed that 36% of households taking in nearly 4 times the median U.S. salary devote nearly all of their income to household expenses. It's particularly true among millennials who are now in their mid-20s to early 40s. That's my generation. My wife and I are, I'm 39 years old. My wife is 38, sorry. But the millennial generation, our generation, states that more than half of the top earners in that generation report having little to nothing left at the end of each month. Okay, so let me pause real quick and let me just take a pulse check over how society teaches us to think about our finances, and let's do some reflection here as a result of it. So when I ask you what comes to mind when I say describe a lifestyle of millionaires, what comes to your mind? Throw it at me. Somebody's always positive in every class. They're like budgeting, putting money together for you. That's fantastic. Yes, it is. But what does TV tell us? What does society tell you? What do tabloids? There you go. Right. Yeah. Well, so see, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Right. This lavish lifestyle. Right. Smart people think exactly like that. That's why they're millionaires, to be honest with you. So I'll get to that. But what society tells us is that based off of appearance, you have nice things, right? You have nice cars, you have nice houses, you have lavish clothing, jewelry, you take nice vacations and whatnot. Those things may all be within that person's threshold, but you can't tell whether or not they actually have the money for it or not, right? How many times do you actually hear about rags to riches story or rags to riches back to rags stories, right? How many professional athletes do you see that are not financially educated that come from poverty-stricken, backgrounds to having millions of dollars because they signed a great contract because they're an amazing athlete, but they're not financially educated. They make bad decisions while they're making that money, and then once their career's done, what happens? Yeah, they have those bills still continue to go on, right? And so what's common is that they end up back in the same spot, right? So in that same book, one of the studies that they actually did and they referenced was from a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And so it's published by this author named Dr. Tom Stanley. What that book actually showed was that they studied the spending habits of 1,000 millionaires. Millionaire being people whose net worth is at least $1 million within their equity, right? And so what are their spending habits and how do they manage their finances? So society teaches us appearance is great, you have all these nice things. But what they actually found in that study through 1,000 different millionaires is that the average millionaire, lives in a middle class home, drives a 2-year or older paid for car, and buys blue jeans at Walmart. Super conservative, contrary to what society tells you, right? So in short, Dr. Stanley found that the typical millionaire found infinitely more motivation from the goal of financial security rather than what friends and family thought. Meaning that these are people, if you actually really want to get down to a stewardship perspective and what you were referring to, these are people that are very intentional about how they are managing their finances, and they don't really care what other people think about them. In fact, you'll find that as you continue this journey and you're gaining wealth, you'll probably get a rise out of kind of being low-key wealthy and nobody really realizing that you have your finances in order and that you are becoming very wealthy, right? Because your idea of what brings you joy financially is not only just honoring God, but it's also knowing that you have security in the game plan that you were on versus what you're trying to impress others with. We call that keeping up with the Joneses, right? So it really doesn't matter. The key principle that I'm trying to get across to you guys is, number one, it's not how much money you make per se. It is how you manage your finances. And then number two, it's not about how it's not about the appearance that you give to signal that you have money. It's the amount of security and peace that you have of knowing that your finances are in order and that you have security, not only to take care of your finances, but also to provide security for your family, right? You guys getting that mindset? Does that make sense to everybody? The idea is this, though. There's so many misconceived notions that society tells us that we're fed about our finances through our lives, that really what it comes down to is we have to understand that nobody is born with smart money skills, and we have to draw a line in the sand to make different decisions and steward our finances different. I skipped this point here, so I'm going to go back. But the second principle is this, that nobody is born with smart money skills. So I like to classify skills into two different categories, right? Skill sets are either innate skill sets or they are acquired skill sets. So by definition, innate skill sets are things that you're going to learn naturally throughout your life through experience, right? So I'll use our children. We have 2 young boys with us, and one of them's name is Emmanuel. He's 7 years old, and our second, Elijah, is 22 months. We have Elijah, who is now learning to speak. He's found his voice now. But through that, think about the things that he's learned innately, right? He's learned to sit up, he's learned to crawl, he's learned to walk, and now he's learning to talk. Those are things that are going to happen naturally throughout his life through him absorbing information. There are other skill sets that he's going to learn, like riding a bike, maybe playing a piano. Let me ask you this. How about managing finances? How about your financial education? Is that an innate skill set or is that a acquired skill set? It's acquired, right? It makes so much sense when I put it that way. However, that's the problem with society, is that a lot of us will treat financial education like it's an innate skill set that we will just learn gradually through the course of our life, through our experiences. And again, I alluded to this when I started, but that was me for the first 10 years of my adult life. I moved out of my mom's house when I was 18 years old. I started working and I started trying to figure out how to manage my finances. I was not brought up to be financially literate. That's not any knock to my parents whatsoever. But what it really comes down to is I had to learn how to manage my finances. And so I was in the mode of collecting a paycheck and then putting it into my bank account or having cash on me and knowing that I had bills to pay, without actually putting it on paper and being strategic over how I was going to spend that money. So what did that mean? I would say, okay, so I know that my car note is coming up. I know that my rent's coming up. I have this much money. And so as long as I have that, I'm okay. What happens when you live that way that's not dictating specifically how you're going to spend your money? Life happens, right? And so when life happens, you take this money and you put it over here. By the time this comes up, now you don't have enough to pay for that rent, right? And so that was the cyclical process, the cancer of finances that I was living in for the first 10 years of my life. What that resulted in is me making some really bad decisions once the snowball really started getting going in a negative way, right? I bought a TV that I shouldn't have bought when I was in college. And so it was fantastic at the time, but now it's one of the ones with the big back on it. So yeah. But it was something that was a luxury and I did not need, nor did I have the money for, right? It was taking me forever to pay it off. And so I was going in and out of jobs. And so I tried to reason with the company and called them and said, hey, I'm having a hard time paying for this based off of how much is actually going to the TV. Can you guys work with me on it? They told me what? No, you signed the contract, you need to pay for it. And I said, well, I guess y'all ain't getting no more money from me because I got better things to do with my money that cause more of a priority, like living in an apartment versus paying for your luxurious TV. So I broke my word with them. What did that mean? Credit went down, collectors after me. I did the same thing with everything, right? I was in a bad situation. I had cars that were being repossessed. I had overdraft fees all the time on my bank account. So that $2 soda that I thought was $2 and it ended up costing $2.20 ended up costing me $38.20 because I had a $36 overdraft fee. She would kill me all the time when she'd look at my bank statement. How you do this every paycheck? And then we were kids at that time, right? We were in our early 20s. I struggled for the first 10 years. That was a big obstacle with us being able to set ourselves up so that we can get married. Hence why, the victory of this now is that we dated for 10 years. We separated for 2 to 3 years, and then God would bring us back together, and then we've been married for 10 years now. But in the midst of that is when I made the change of I have to change the way that I'm thinking about my finances. And one of the things that I did was I drew a line in the sand and I said, with everything that was happening to me and my finances being the way that the mess that they were, and I just I didn't feel like I was ever getting ahead. And every time I would start to get ahead, despite how smart I thought I was, despite my great work ethic that I thought I had, something would always happen that would bring me back to earth, right? And it was just like I couldn't get ahead of the problems that were happening. And it was a cyclical process of me doing that with my finances that brought me back to not being able to get ahead the way that I wanted to. And I think a lot of us can relate in your own way in that sense. And so for me, I got to the point where my mother-in-law actually had a come to Jesus moment with me because now it started impacting the opportunities that were being presented for me. I was a young man that had a lot of potential in front of me and some opportunities to do some great things. And then those opportunities started to fall by the wayside because my credit wasn't in order. And so when you start wanting to work for professional accounting firms and things like that, and they pull your credit and they see that you're not good with your finances, how can that accounting firm trust you? Right? So I get turned down for those jobs and I'm like, dang it, just again, it happened. My future mother-in-law had a come to Jesus moment with me and said, you're a good kid, but you are not right with your finances. And I'm just going to be real with you. You cannot be right with God and not be right with your finances. You made a promise to these companies that you backed out on your word with, and you need to reconcile those things or else you're always going to live in this chaotic state. And so I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. There's extreme amount of humility behind it, right? Especially if you can tell what my attitude was at that time. Like I was I'm gonna figure this out mode and you can't tell me nothing. So that was something that I had to take a deep look in the mirror about. And then at the end of the day, I talked to God and had this really heartfelt conversation with God and said, you know what, God, I am tired of doing this my way. I know what you're calling me to do. And this isn't just this. I've tried for so long to make this happen on my own. And so I'm just going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you because your word says this. And so I know and I expect that you are going to make a way for me because I'm going to honor you the way that I should. That not only allowed me to reconcile my debts, but it also allowed us the opportunity to get married and start out our futures financially healthy. And that's a big part of our testimony and why we want to share this with you guys, because this was something that compelled us so much during this journey. And then life happened and we incurred debt and we got into the mode of how can we pay this off and be better with our finances so that we can make more progress in that way. And so we got to the point where we had so much success, or we're having success, that we felt compelled to share that with you guys while we were in the journey. So that's why we're here today. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about now is exactly why we're in this class. Let's get down to the meat of this, right? How are we going to succeed in this class? How are we going to use this class so that you can develop these good financial habits and turn that into stewardship? So number one is you have to have a game plan. The 7 baby steps are in your folders. Those 7 baby steps allow you to do 3 things essentially. They allow you to save for emergencies, pay off all your debt for good, and build wealth long term. Okay, those 7 baby steps, the beauty of it is those 7 baby steps work for everybody, and everybody is, while we're in different stages within those 7 baby steps, they're always applicable to every single one of us. We might be in different steps. So as a disclaimer, it's not a progressive model where you start at step 1, you make it to step 7, and you're in perfection. You're perfect for the rest of your life. Sometimes life happens and you jump from step to step. But the thing is that if you follow those steps in sequence, they have been tried and tested to be proven successful in managing your finances and then also building that wealth long term to keep you in a healthy place. That's one of the reasons why my wife and I, not only were able to accomplish things financially, but also it allowed us to prepare for hardships that come in the event that life happens. And life will happen, as you guys know as well as I do, right? Life will happen, and you need to be prepared for those things on top of the goals that you want as far as financial success. So the way that you're going to get there from those 7 baby steps is having 2 things in order. One, these 2 things are your homework assignments that we've gone through already, right? So your financial statement that Kenny was alluding to last week, very important because it allows you to understand what your starting point is. Your financial statement is an inventory of all the assets that you have. So the assets are things that bring money into your portfolio, meaning that you have equity in your house, right? You have retirement plans that are already in place. It's not your income because you don't own your income, right? But it's things that bring money to your financial portfolio. You take an inventory of all your assets and you minus your liabilities. Your liabilities are things that take money out of your portfolio, meaning that you have debt. Your car is a debt, right? Your house possibly is a debt. When you take your assets, you minus your liabilities, you get your total net worth as of today, right? Your total net worth as of today is important because it gives you a number that gives you an indication of your health financially, right? And what I mean by that is it can be a good number, right? Or it can be perceived as a bad number. The point of this is that it's an indication of how healthy you are financially right now that allows you to set your sights on what you need to do to get better, right? Whether you're in a good place or not. Now, I will say this, don't get caught up on that number because the idea is that number will not stay the same. It is purely for an indication of where you are today. Based off of this program and based off of where you're going to go after this program, we expect that your finances continue to get better. So your net worth is going to continue growing after this. So don't get caught up in saying that this is the end because I'm not where I want to today. That's why I'm in the class, because I'm learning, right? Your starting point is important because if you don't have a starting point, you cannot have a goal, right? And if you don't have a goal, then you're not going to put the actions required in to meet those goals. Understand? So the second thing is going to be your monthly spending plan. So outside of your financial statement, which is your starting point, your monthly spending plan is your unique game plan that's going to allow you to allocate your money or spend your money specifically towards where you want it to go. Meaning that you're not only covering expenses, but you're also paying off your debts, you're saving for emergencies, and you're also putting money away long term as well. All based off of that methodology that we're using of the 7 baby steps. Now, what it really does is your monthly spending plan allows you to command your money where it needs to go instead of your money dictating where it's going to go because you did not plan for it. Does that make sense? That was me for that first 10 years. I lived out of my wallet. So I knew I had money in my wallet, but then because I didn't strategically plan for where I was going to spend that money, I always came up short at the end of the month. Your monthly spending plan allows you to have a specific game plan so that you dictate exactly where your money's going and you are in full control of your money. So in short, your monthly spending plan allows you to, 1, create a unique game plan that is specific to your financial journey. It allows you to implement that game plan into your finances. It allows you to do a pulse check, which is how am I doing? Do observation of running these numbers and seeing how I'm spending my money. Am I really sticking to my game plan the way that I was supposed to, or do I need to make some adjustments? And then the act part is, do I need to make adjustments? Right? What I'm talking about in example could be stuff like if your electricity, if your water bill is not the amount that you have set aside for your water bill is not enough, and you know that you're using your water bill like you normally are, that's probably something that you need to make an adjustment for, right? Versus if I were spending money on eating out and I overspent eating out, that's probably a behavioral adjustment that needs to be made, right? Now I have to figure out how to not eat out so much. So the last thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about is the topic of tithing, right? The topic of tithing is what I call God's X factor. God's X factor in tithing is, and if you're not familiar with the topic of tithing, tithing is your honoring of God with your finances by bringing your first 10% into God's storehouse, into God's kingdom. So when you do that, what you are actually doing is you're honoring God as your source, as your provider of your income, and God is openly saying that I will allow you to do more with 90% of your finances with me involved with it versus you trying to move forward with 100% on your own. Does that make sense? Tithing allows you to not only have God's promises that he openly states that these are the financial promises that I'm giving to you, but it also gives him a covering over your finances as well. Your covering might not just be in the sense of direct increase, which is fantastic. Those things all come with God's promises, but it might also be the ability to navigate tricky situations that would have otherwise caused financial strain or hardships on you. Does that make sense? So one of the things that we were honored with was a couple years ago, my wife and I were asked to give our testimony on the topic of tithing, and it really was to the point where it impacted us so much that we wanted to bring it to you guys in this class as well. So I'm going to play this video for you, but I'm also going to bring my wife up afterwards to kind of share her perspective from a wife's perspective and from a woman's perspective of the things that we've been going through. Okay? Enjoy, guys. We are Darrell and Giovanna Keene.
We come from two different backgrounds, and I was basically raised in church all my life. So I actually started talking to him about tithing because it has accepted in the beginning.
I rejected the idea. I don't know anything about that. The church gets enough money, and this is my money. I remember my mother-in-law, she challenged me and said, you know, Darrell, you're doing good things and you're serving God, but you are not right with your finances. I made a lot of decisions to not pay back debtors. My mother-in-law said, you need to make right with your debtors. She's absolutely right. There was nothing more clear to me that I needed to do than to give my finances to God. And that was when we officially, started tithing. What's awesome about that is I saw God bless that obedience instantly and ended up reconciling all of my debts.
We were doing everything right. We settled everything together, and then we ended up going through a lot of losses and financial challenges.
March 7th, 2017, our brother-in-law passed away suddenly from stomach cancer. And we found out that we were having a boy not long after that. We decided to name our son Christian after our brother-in-law. My wife started experiencing complications with her pregnancy. June 15th, 2017. We were in the hospital as she was having those complications with her pregnancy. Family all around us because they're celebrating her birthday, but she was going into labor at that time. He was born prematurely, but we are so humbled and blessed that we got to spend 2.5 hours with him. He was alive, he was well, he was healthy, he was a great looking boy. We prayed as a family and told him it was okay to go home.
My brother-in-law ended up passing away, and we lost a baby. Those were medical bills that got stacked on. We ended up having another baby after that. He's a miracle from God. He's our deserving of it, you're a blessing or promise.
My wife actually had a hard pregnancy with our son that we're referring to now, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, if you guys don't know, that means God is with us, and nothing more fitting than the situation that we were in than to have God remind us that God is with us.
When he was 1 year old, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The bills that came with that, which came out about $20,000. But God provided every step of the way. Going through all that was really hard. It's like you're a Christian, everything is supposed to be great, but you're gonna go through challenges. But through everything that we've gone through, the medical bills that we've gone through, God has still always been faithful and made a way. That's why I say tithing, you can never outgive God. The numbers don't make sense. He just makes a way.
In hindsight now, God prepared us for all of that. It started with us being obedient and diligent with our commitment of our finances. God calls us to be stewards of our finances because it's His to begin with. I am so happy to share that my wife just passed the 2-year mark of being in remission last February. God has exponentially blessed us. And I'm not saying that we did not struggle in different ways, but
How long ago did you have cancer? How long ago? That was 2019. It's almost 5 years.
So 2019 to 2020.
That's when I went through chemo and surgery.
I don't know where we would be right now because we wouldn't be disciplined in any other area of our
I
life.
might qualify to have living benefits now. After 5
Even
years.
to the point where I'm happy to share our latest miracle. We are expecting now. And so my wife is pregnant,
God is so
and we are
amazing.
so
How
looking
can
forward
God
to
that?
what's to come.
Which
But God
was.
is good and He is true to His promises.
Amen.
Okay. So that thank you. So that little baby was Elijah. He's now 22 months and thriving and running around now and talking now too like crazy. He's a major blessing. We were told after my cancer treatments and going through all my cancer treatments and surgeries that we would not be able to have any more babies. And my husband and I always knew and prayed, and we knew that God was going to bless us with more. We told the doctors, no, we're going to have more. And we did. We ended up getting pregnant a little over a year after stopping some of the hormone treatments. And, you know, he was amazed. Even he said it. When I came in and told him I was pregnant, my oncologist, he was like, wow, that is God. And I said, yes, that is God. So with that, as you can see, we have gone through a lot of hardships that have impacted our finances, but because we have always tithed, God has always provided. Like I said, it doesn't make sense. Like we went through all those treatments. Each treatment was $20,000 for each of my chemo treatments that we went through. That didn't even include the surgeries that I had to go through afterwards. But like I said, with all of that being said, we actually ended up paying off about $150,000 of the medical debts that we had with following these biblical principles, and it works. The other thing that recently happened that he mentioned was last year in November, my husband ended up getting laid off from his job. We lost 2/3 of our income when he got laid off. And I was kind of freaking out because I was like, oh my goodness, we're losing 2/3 of our income. Like, are we going to be able to make it? When I went back into, because we have a monthly spending plan, went back into it, adjusted it without his income, it literally was just enough of what we needed. And he got blessed with the severance pay too, that we were able to put to finish off our emergency funds and have, we've had to touch it a little bit, but like God has provided. That's God's provisions. When you are honoring God with the finances that He's giving you and you're following these biblical principles, He will always make a way, even in the times that it's really hard, that you feel like, oh my goodness, how are we going to make it? He makes a way. So I'm going to let you close it off.
Guys, not much to say much after that, right? Again, that's God's X factor.
Yes.
We are just humbled to be on the journey. God has never left us, and it's apparent to us that He has never left us. Word of God says so, but there's also all these elbow nudges along the way that God's just winking at us saying, I got you. You guys are going through it. You need to learn some lessons right now. I'm teaching you, but I got you. And now, I've picked up a part-time job. It's more like full-time now. My wife had increase through a promotion at her job, and so we're on the right side of abundance again, despite what we thought was our circumstances, right? Our circumstances were like we're having some financial hardships. We were able to weather that storm because of how we apply these principles into our finances, and because of that, it not only is allowing us to get back on top of our finances and stay healthy, but we're doing much more with much less than what we were before. And so when that increase comes back, we're going to be better stewards of that even more towards God's kingdom, and then also able to do more towards our goals that we wanted, which is making us the kingdom builders that God calls us to be. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. So I just encourage you guys, if through our testimony, we feel so compelled to share that with you guys, because there's nothing more that speaks out towards having faith in God's provision with your finances than going through the fire and seeing God the entire time. And so we just encourage you guys, if you're looking at this and you're saying, I want to better my finances, and you're struggling still to make adjustments, trust him. Okay? God will make a way. And there's a game plan. You guys have it in front. Again, what matters even more than what you do in this class is what happens after this class is done. That makes the biggest difference in your lives moving forward. Okay? So
If I can just plug in one last thing too that I just really want to share. I know we're talking about finances and this is a big part of our testimony, but always, we've gone through some really hard situations, especially when we lost our first child. Always keep God first through everything emotional, everything. Just keep him first and cling to him during those times, because he will get you through.
Guys, I'd like to get you guys to service, so I'm going to close this out in prayer. We'll stick around if anybody wants to connect with us as the coaches. So feel free to engage with us with your homework if you want to bring us into that picture, okay?